this is a hot button team that we could start out with here because Matthew Stafford's injury, I'm still worried about it, man. I really am. I know that he got back to practice. There were some funny jokes around the internet, people saying that it was a Matthew Stafford imposter. We never actually saw him without his helmet on. Was it an AI, simulation? Was that the practice footage that we were given? No, I do think that it was actually Matthew Stafford. But I get a little bit worried about the back injury here. Let's look at what the Rams were able to do last season. 10-7 overall. First in the NFC West. They lost in that divisional round. And I think I said this early on this very show. The Rams were a team where if we don't get that crazy snow game at Philadelphia, I legitimately think they could have beaten the Eagles that weekend. If all things were equal, say like if we were playing in a dome. Now, Eagles fans might come at me for that, but hey, you know what? You got the advantage of playing in Philadelphia. You're playing at home. That's why you had the better record. I understand it. It worked out for you. Their offensive grade last year was 9th in the NFL, 79.9. Again, Stafford, a big reason why, but not just him. We'll get to that in a second. Their EPA per play was actually 13th. Their defensive grade was 15th at a 69.7, but it was a really young unit. Those guys are getting a little bit older. I think they could be even better this upcoming season. Our projected win total that we have for the Los Angeles Rams is 9.5. Dalton, what do you think about that? 9.5, obviously that's a number expecting Matthew Stafford to be the starting quarterback of this team. How worried are you about Stafford? And then just talk to me about your thoughts about the rest of this Rams team.
A good level of worried. It's good to see him practicing this week again. But look, I think the biggest concern for me with this team anyway was Stafford's lack of mobility, even healthy. The struggles they had last year in pass protection and his performance under pressure, where he was one of the worst passers in football under pressure last year. It's extremely concerning. I think their entire season hinges on two guys. One is Matthew Stafford, and two in front of him is left tackle Alaric Jackson, right? He's got the blood clot issue. We don't really know when he's going to be on the field. And last year, there was nothing you could point to more that correlated to wins and losses for this team than pass protection, right? I mean, that's just where it was at. They had 8 games, I believe. No, sorry, 11 games where they had less than a 62.5 pass blocking grade. They went 4-7 in those games. Okay, so I think when you're talking about if they hit above that mark, they were basically unbeatable because Stafford was protected, and when he's protected, he can still make every throw on the field. But yeah. I think those are the two X-factor guys for me. It's Stafford and it's Jackson, and it goes hand in hand because, again, this team last year in total was the third worst pass blocking team in the league for us with our pass blocking grading. When they did pass protect, they won ball games. It was that simple because Stafford was able to stand in the pocket and make throws. He's obviously 36, 37 years old now. He can't move like he used to. He's not going to improvise outside the pocket anymore. He's just hit that age where he can't do that. Now, if he's got a back injury and he's even less mobile than maybe the slightly mobile he was last year, and there's no improv that can come out of him at all, I just worry about where this offense goes, even as loaded as they are on the outside. The pass protection and now Stafford's health, that's really going to determine their whole season.
Yeah, and for the strengths on this team, I do agree with you. I think that health is just the main thing with the Rams. I think if they're fully healthy, they're absolutely still one of the players in the NFC to potentially make the NFC Championship game. And, of course, who knows after that to make the Super Bowl. But health is a big question mark here. You say that their biggest passing strength, or their biggest strength on this team is their pass catchers. Everybody can go see these articles over at PFF.com, which you penned, obviously. And I think that the pass catchers certainly are going to be what they lean on no matter what. I think if it's Stafford, it looks a little bit better. But, of course, Puka Nacua, highest graded wide receiver that we had in football last year. I mean, he was unbelievable. He's been so good over the last 2 years of his career. Now they're adding Devontae Adams. They have Tutu Atwell as well. They're adding Terrence Ferguson into the mix of the tight end spot, who very clearly they have a lot of high hopes for, drafting him in the top 50. So the pass catchers of this team, I agree with you, massive strength. And maybe Jimmy Garoppolo can make some noise if he ends up having to start a handful of these games here for Matthew Stafford. We saw the mailman, Stetson Bennett, the guy who just cannot go away. We saw what he was able to do in the preseason as well. But how much faith do you have that this pass-catching unit can still carry the Rams offense? I don't want to say make it quarterback-proof because I certainly don't think it's that level. I don't think you think it's that level either. But What level of faith do you have with this being the strength of the team?
I mean, very, very high. I mean, when you look at, again, you mentioned the highest graded receiver in football in Puka Nacua. Devontae Adams still has plenty left in the tank, and he showed that last year, especially when he got to the Jets. He's still very, very capable of beating man-to-man coverage. That was one thing that was a bit of a weakness for Cooper Kupp and the rest of the receivers. Adams can still win one-on-one. I think that's a huge asset for him. You look at Tutu Atwell, you look at Jordan Whittington. You got a really good group of tight ends, I think, with a fully healthy Tyler Higbee, Colby Parkinson, second-round pick Terrence Ferguson. Obviously, even Kyron Williams can catch some balls out of the backfield. They've got a deep stable of pass catchers that, again, when the quarterback, whether it's Stafford or Garoppolo, is protected, give them a real shot to win games every single week. We saw it last year, what Nacua can do, and it feels weird to me still that he's only going into his third year in the NFL because it feels like we've been talking about him forever. But I think this group of wide receivers that very quietly was the highest graded group in the NFL last year, this is a group that can carry their offense. They just need the pass protection and to be able to keep the quarterback upright.
Let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball because it was a lot of young guys last year, but specifically Jared Verse, I think, is their rising star. And he might not even be a rising star. He might just already be a star. When you and I did the PFF 50, the top 50 players going into this upcoming season, Jared Verse was a player that we felt like we needed to get in there. And we felt like that was sort of going to be different from a lot of the other top 50 lists that might be coming out. But we got the data. I mean, the data shows the way that this guy won as a pass rusher, you know, how many total pressures that he generated. He only had, what was it, 4.5, 5.5 sacks, something like that. He only had that little sacks, but it was because of so many missed tackles in the backfield. If he finished even half of the missed tackles that it felt like he had in the backfield, this would have been a double-digit sacker. We would have been talking about this guy at a much higher level, and I feel like he would have been given a little bit more of the respect that he deserves. To me, Jared Verse is the guy on this defense that you have to be afraid of, and if he's really taking that next step this year, along with a lot of those other young guys, the defense is going to be better than, I believe it was 23rd, I said last year in defensive grade. That's going to be more close to around the middle of the league, maybe even top half of the league. And again, if Matthew Stafford is healthy, we're talking about a really, really good football team here. But on the defensive side of the ball, I really do think that it starts with Jared Verse.
No, it absolutely does. He's their best player. He established that last year. I mean, you're talking about a guy, top 10 pass rush grade, top 10 pass rush win rate. The only other edge defender in football who had an 80-plus grade in run defense and in the pass rush was T.J. Watt. 89 pressures were the second most we've ever recorded by a rookie edge defender, only behind Nick Bosa in 2019. He didn't just have a good rookie year. He had a historic rookie year. He's already one of probably the top 10 edge defenders in football. And the fact that he's that good in run defense as well is just incredible considering how young he is. And you mentioned it. He was a top 10 edge defender last year, and he led the league in missed tackles. The second he fixes that part, there's no ceiling on him. There really isn't, considering what he showed us. He's going to be one of the elite players in the league for a long time.
I think a couple of the other players that really stepped up for them, obviously Braden Fisk, sort of his running mate along the defensive line. Another rookie last year who I think is going to be even better this year. Byron Young, I feel like, has been getting better over the last couple of years as well. They've got Kobe Turner. Now they're bringing in Poona Ford, who has been an underrated player, I think, for the last couple of years. Really starting to get the recognition that he deserves, and I think that's why he got the payday day that he did this free agency period. But I think Cam Curl and Cam Kinchins are a really good safety duo back there. Very clearly, they had a lot of really great chemistry. And then when you look at the linebacker level, I love that them drafting Chris Paul Jr. I think that he's going to fit perfectly with this team. And then finding an undrafted free agent gem in Omar Spates last year, who was fantastic for them. And to say that you got an undrafted free agent who made the roster is one thing. Then for that player to not only make the roster but start for you, and then not only start for you but play well for you, very impressive. And I think that really helped elevate a really young defense. And so it's a lot of those names still that are there for this team, but now they're all a year older. They're still in that defensive system. And I don't know if there's any one of those other names outside of Verse that you're really intrigued by. I know they got Josiah Stewart as well in the edge, who you pointed out in your article as somebody to watch for as a rookie. But man, I love the names that they have on this defense. I really like the outlook for this team, and I think the year two can be even better for a lot of these guys.
For sure. I think Ford's a good call out because they signed him basically so they had a better shot of beating the Eagles, right? Because the Eagles in the two games they played him last year, Saquon Barkley ran all over him. You have to be able to stop the run against a lot of these teams in the NFC, right? You think about Philadelphia, Washington, Detroit, Minnesota, Atlanta, even Green Bay. All of these teams want to run the football. Arizona in their own division, right? All these teams want to run the football, and they felt like we need somebody who's that big run stopper in the middle next to Kobe Turner. I think Poona Ford's a really good call out there. And then you mentioned Josiah Stewart. I thought an underrated need for this team going into the draft was depth behind Jared Verse, right? You've got Verse, you've got Byron Young as the starters, but they really kind of thinned out in free agency when it came to depth at edge defender. Josiah Stewart, I think, is a perfect fit as a situational pass rusher for him. Third in college football in pass rush grade last year, second in pass rush win rate, almost 28%. This guy, he's undersized, but whether he was at Coastal Carolina or at Michigan, he's always gotten the job done. He's super aggressive to make up for that size. I think Stewart's going to be a really nice addition when you talk about that designated pass rusher role. He's going to have an early role with this team.
All right, just like we've done for every episode so far in our divisional preview series, Ben Lindsay has some season-long bets for us to take a look at for all of these teams. Ben's looking at the Rams to miss the playoffs at plus 130, which you can find over at DraftKings. And his reason for that, Rams offensive line ranked 30th in PFF pass blocking grade as a unit in 2024 and have questions about when starting left tackle Alaric Jackson will be able to return due to blood clots, as you mentioned earlier in the show. That, coupled with the concerning reports about Stafford's back injury, is enough to raise concerns for me about their offense to be competitive in that NFC West, which we said is a very competitive division every single year. And so our projections, given that I think that we're projecting Alaric Jackson and Matthew Stafford to be healthy, had them at 9.5 wins. But you can understand how tight that division's going to be. If they can't get to that double-digit win mark, you can get plus money for them to miss the playoffs. I can certainly understand that. What do you think about that bet being plus money there? Sort of what Ben's talking about here for the Rams.
Yeah, I mean when you make these bets, you paint the picture, right? And that's exactly the picture you're talking about. Is they can't pass protect, and if you can't pass protect for Jimmy Garoppolo either, then you're probably going to sink also because he's not moving anywhere from the top of his drop either. So I think there is definitely a picture to paint there. If things do go wrong and the pass protection isn't good and Stafford isn't healthy, I think this is very realistic. I think if everything goes right for this team and Alaric Jackson is good by, say, midseason and Matthew Stafford plays all 17 games and this was all much ado about nothing, then I think they're the favorites to win this division. But there's definitely a road here, especially with the value at plus money. It makes a lot of sense. If you're worried about Matthew Stafford, this is something you can keep in your back pocket to hedge that and go, okay, this is a competitive division. I think the other three teams obviously are very talented. I think Arizona especially is looking to make another step. And then talk about the rest of the NFC. There's a lot of teams that got better. So I think there's now a much wider variance for the Rams of what we think could happen, as opposed to if you felt good about Stafford at 100%, I think they're pretty solidly the favorites to win this division.
Yeah, and I think that looking at them fully healthy as the favorites to win the division, I don't have pushback on that. But just given the injury concerns, the fact that this team firing on all cylinders, it felt like during the second half of the season, they could have played better out of the gate. And I understand that they were playing with a lot of young guys, but they won 10 games last year. And like I said, they were firing on all cylinders as we were getting into the playoffs and playing well there. So you can realistically think, all right, maybe one or two less wins that they have this year if those star players, Alaric Jackson and Matthew Stafford, are going to be missing time, or if they're not 100% as the year goes on. And so I do think that that's a good bet, especially getting it at plus money. Obviously, we hope that all of these guys are fully healthy. But when you're talking about Matthew Stafford, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but you had written this in your article, and I think it's a really good point. He had the most turnover-worthy plays when pressured last season. So, like, even if Stafford is out there and he is healthy, if you don't have Alaric Jackson, if that offensive line is not going to be better overall, like, that was already an issue with him. And you mentioned, okay, Jimmy Garoppolo is that next guy, and then Stetson Bennett is QB3 on this team. There's just too many question marks, in my opinion. Too many question marks for them going into the season. I'd love for them to be fully healthy because this Rams team is a lot of fun when they are. But I'm nervous. I'm nervous about this Rams team. And if you like that bet, heck, even if you didn't, and you want to check out more info, more data on a lot of the bets that you can make for the season, as well as like player props that you could see week in and week out, go get a PFF Plus subscription. You guys can see all the data that's right there. You can use our player prop tool that we have on the PFF app, so you can see that every single week, and you can see which lines we think have the biggest edge compared to our data and our simulations and what we think are going to happen. So you can check all that stuff out if you have a PFF Plus subscription, again, over at pff.com, as well as in the PFF app. The app is the best way to be able to use that player prop tool if that's how you really like to get some skin in the game when you're watching these games this upcoming season.